welcome to the fourth and final review of the evening, and indeed the final review of season 20. And up this time is Valis, the Phantasm Soldier Collection. Right, so where to start here?
In the
Because,
beginning.
well, it's more. So, Valis, this is a curious series, um, mainly because it's a series with a lot of history to it that you probably don't know about. Even if like you're plugged into the retro scene, unless you're plugged into specific systems. Like, if you're a big fan of the TurboGrafx 16, then you probably do know what Valis is. Um, Whereas if you're a more mainstream Nintendo head, Valis is probably giving you a big blank. Um, and, a big chunk of that is because Valis, not entirely, but, it was pretty absent from the Nintendo sphere. Um, but Valis was also a pioneer, um, or at least I'm being told it is, because there's a lot of verbiage here as it was a pioneer in the bishojo genre. Okay, I'm not exactly sure what that is exactly. I know what I know what bishojo means. Um, you know, pretty guardian.
Pretty girl.
Yeah,
Hmm.
right, right, but it's thanks to Sailor Moon, it's become
The
more
guardian
specific.
part is the other half. It
Yeah,
Bishojo just means pretty girl.
like
So in this
right, but
case, a Bishojo game is a game where a significant part of the appeal of the game is the fact that it has pretty girls in it and you get to look at them.
yes, and tied to a very specific niche in this game. Honestly, throughout the series, um, if you know a lot about Japanese otaku culture at the time, you can really pin it down to a certain period, and that's like the mid to late 80s, like specifically like around 1985, 1986. There was a big trend going through the anime scene, um, thanks to the OVA boom. And that is the girls with chainmail bikini, basically. It wasn't necessarily chainmail bikinis, but it was bikini armor.
Yes.
You know, very popular aesthetic for the time, and it's captured in here in spades. Mainly because the first game came out and it just never ditched it. Um, but it's important to note because um, it's one of the more problematic aspects of the game because there's no getting around it. Um, like our protagonist here, Yuko Aso, she's just an ordinary Japanese high school girl.
Stop us if
Yeah,
you've heard this one before.
right. But it's important to mention that who's in very revealing gear, and a good chunk of the like her big rival in the first game is also in the bikini armor. Um, in fact, there's like a note on the Steam page where it's everything was developed at the time of release. Sort of disclaimer because this is probably not going to play as well, here in the year of 2024, or I suppose that depends on the segment, really. Um, But this game series has gotten re-released, and not just on the Steam here, but in fact, this original collection was made for the Nintendo Switch a good 4 years ago. But when we're talking about the collection here, we do have to talk about it in the specific context of the Steam version, because it operates very differently than the Switch version. But I'll get to that right now, I suppose. Because the Steam version here, I don't know why they did this, but instead of putting out, your typical retro collection, it's like, here's a bunch of old games, here's the package in it, and the assorted other bits and bobs to go with it. No, they decided to turn this into a platform. Like, no, I don't get it, but so instead of buying the games as you would do from, like, Digital Eclipse or whatever, what you have to do is you have to download the free launcher, and then you have to buy the games as DLC. I suppose on the one hand, that does give you the discretion that, if you don't want, say, Valis 2, you don't have to get it.
Yeah, this works kind of like the Sonic or the Sega Genesis collection on Steam does, where you can get bits and pieces as you want. You don't need to get the full collection at once.
Yeah. It's important to note that collection came out like over 10 years ago. Probably a big reason why it's getting delisted soon at time of recording. But that's speculation for another episode. Anyway, so in the case here, you have to get the individual episodes and also the extra bits. In this case, the art book and the soundtrack. Once again, those are things that are usually included in a typical compilation. Like, so it's worth noting there. And as it so happens, that means I will have to go through all the games individually, as opposed to, covering it overall, because, instead of having to review one package, they put out, 3 games that you can optionally get, along with, I'd say a standard set of, extras as DLC, technically speaking. Although, honestly, if you weren't going to get these, I don't know why you would download the launcher. Because you can't really do anything outside of, play the games and listen to and read the art book. And you don't even need the launcher if you buy the actual things. Like, you don't need to go into the launcher to look at the files. They actually download on your computer separately. In fact, if you open the right thing, it'll go to the local directory. Anyway, so with that in mind, we shift to Valis here. Valis, the Phantasm soldier. Which is... Okay. I'm trying to think of where to start here, because what we're seeing here is kind of a lie. Or rather, I'm going to have to unpack it. So, the specific versions of Valis 1, Valis 2, and Valis 3, that's another thing that isn't here. There are 4 Valis games. Technically, there are 5, but we're not going to talk about Valis X or Valis Cross. That's the hentai title. Right? I don't think that will ever see the light of day again. Right?
Especially not on this channel.
And if it does, it won't be on the Switch and probably won't be on Steam.
It won't be on the Switch, Steam is another story because, well, like once again, manga gamer.
I
Like,
know I know they like can do it now.
yeah. But, but yeah, that might run into some problems with the whole age thing.
Hmm.
But once again, that's neither here nor there. So anyway, Valis. This is the TG16 slash PC engine, specifically the PC engine CD-ROM, or technically speaking, this is the CD-ROM squared.
For added fancy sound and voice clips.
Yes, mostly in the voice clips. So here's another thing, like about the specifically the TG16 versions. They were some of the earliest CD games like ever. You know, Telenet Japan slash Wolf Team. They were the ones. They got a really early jump on the audio visual craze, let's say. So that had a double edged sword. Um, you might have seen earlier we had the fully voiced intro, and but in the case of Valis here, once again, it's a bit of a lie. And to get to the core quantification here, that's because this game came out last on this system.
Oh, is it a prequel or is it a remake with enhancements?
That one is a remake with enhancements, specifically enhancements from Valis 3. Because a good example is Valis 3 introduced the slide mechanic into the series. Um, like if you hit down and attack, you will do a damaging slide.
Down and jump.
Yeah, down and yeah. Point is that wasn't a thing until until Valis 3, and this game came out after Valis 3. That's why I'm saying this game is a bit of a lie, because what you're playing is basically the ultimate form of Valis 1. Because there is a whole history, there is a whole lineage of Valis ports. Not a whole bunch of those to get through, because here's another thing. Those may be showing up on our doorstep in the future. I don't know what Edith's plans are here, if they're going to release subsequent Valis games like for the launcher, which is what I suspect they may do. But, here's the thing. There are 2 other Valis collections on the Nintendo Switch. And they contain, well, the other Valis games. So, it's, it's not really worth going through like the PC-98 or the MSX version of Mugen. Sorry, trying to get the name here. Stupid. Yeah. Like Mugen Valis. Not Seshi. It's like the Infinite Soldier something or other. Yeah. Sorry. No, it is Mugen Seshi Valis. That's the original name of the game. That's the computer version.
Oh, right, Mugen, right. It Phantom Soldier, right. Mugen Senshi.
Yeah.
Mugen also sounds like infinite, but it's different kanji.
Yeah.
Because Japan.
Don't get us started, or there will be violent screaming by the end of the next 5 minutes.
Very true. And my mother continually wonders why I don't want to take Japanese. Like, I know enough to know.
It's not that. Well, anyway.
Look, it's hard enough.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so. Anyway, getting back to the audiovisual presentation. So, these games were on the cutting edge, more or less. So it's got very, very advanced for the time, graphical presentations. The long cutscenes are very much a showcase of what the CD-ROM format can do.
Yeah, like,
because
today these are laughable. 80s, this was fucking groundbreaking shit.
Yeah, honestly, and it's also worth noting the TG16 here is providing a superior experience to, say, something like the Sega CD.
Right.
It's in the color depth here, and the colors on, because the Sega CD was really constrained by the ability of the Genesis in its production of colors.
Yep. Why did
Like I
they
said,
use that chip?
yeah. Like I said, there is no fucking Sega CD game that looks this fucking gorgeous.
And here's the chainmail bikini lads.
Every console back then had different trade-offs on what they were good at.
Yeah. So where the package was lacking is in the music. Once again, it's technically Red Book audio, but because they're such early productions, and also probably continuing on with the tradition, they don't really take advantage of the music format. Like, it's still MIDI.
Yeah. Granted, I think part of it is they had to do that if they wanted to have the fully voiced lines, because, space is still very much a problem.
Right. And...
oh god, and the ice level.
Yep.
It's funny because your basic running animation feels like it's slightly out of sync no matter what you're running on.
Yeah, that's the other thing about this game series. It's generally considered to be second-tier stuff. Not awful, not terrible, even maybe a bit above decent. But
if you were doing it these days, it would have much snappier controls and it would have snappier controls and a little bit more agility. You'd have a double jump. It would probably be made by like Way Forward or Inti Creates or something.
Yeah.
Slightly cuter art style.
Oh yeah, like the art style. Well, the art style is pure 80s. Like,
it's good. It's just the faceless sprite thing has not aged amazingly well, I think.
No, it's not. But once again, this.
Oh no, it's what they did at the time. Yeah.
For the era, even though I think like this version came out in, I want to say 1992, 1993. Like, once again, it was fairly late. It might have even been after Valis 4. I do know it was later than, it's the final version of Valis 1, and it came out in the 90s. Even though it's retaining, it looks very 80s. That's because the base product is 80s. And it can't really move away from that. Probably didn't last long enough to move away from it. Anyway, from what I've read, because Valis is a name I did hear about in the 90s, but it was in like relation to the TurboGrafx 16. Like, I remember Valis 3 coming up on GamePro TV, which we've looked at on this program.
Yeah, probably won't be the last time we look at GamePro TV, let's be real.
Right, but the point, or like I saw Valis 2 mentioned in a magazine or something like that. For the Genesis, because the Valis games were mainstays on the Genesis / Mega Drive as well. The only times Valis ever hit the Nintendo sphere was the Famicom version of Valis 1 and Super Valis 4. I'm like, which is available on the Nintendo Switch Online, by the way. But, you know, each version of Valis has its own quirks and baggage to it. That's why I'm not addressing any of them in detail, because I might have to review them in a future review. I don't know. Like, legitimately, like, they could legitimately do, like, send the Genesis version of Valis 2 and so on and so forth to us. So, got to keep that in mind. Anyway, overall, yeah, the game is fine. Back in the day, like, you would have been showing this off for the graphics and the the presentation and all that.
Mm-hmm.
The gameplay, it's kind of janky.
Very much so.
Not gonna
Yes.
lie. It's it definitely reflects the B tier designation of Telenet and Wolf Team. Plus, you can kind of tell which series this game was kind of wanting to be, even beyond the pretty girl stuff. Hint: it ends in Vania.
Yeah. There are castles involved.
Yeah.
Although your combat
Yeah,
method here is very different. This is very. I want to say ghouls and ghosts. I mean,
yeah, Ghouls and
not
Ghosts as
exactly,
well.
but the whole you have a melee weapon, but your main attack is sword beams.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
it's not
only if
full.
you've not died. You
You
lose
know,
your beam
See
on
you could
death.
also
also,
ghouls and ghosts. Yes,
yeah,
Fair.
you could
a
also
few
put Mega
Castlevanias
Man.
get you a fireball at the end of your whip if you get a lot of upgrades without dying, but
Yeah,
mostly not. And even when you do, the range still isn't like full screen. That's what sub weapons are for.
yeah. Um, Another thing to like they've even got the voices here before the bosses start, which
Mm-hmm.
once again in modern times is very annoying. Like you would never see this in a modern game, but they
Uh,
do this here because, well, no, well, let me get into the specifics. One, it's another showcase of what the CD-ROM technology can do. We can have the speech right before, even when the sprites are on screen.
Yeah,
But it's
no,
also,
I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying it's done amazing. I'm just thinking I can definitely think of the boss introduction, including a voice clip, is still very much a thing.
but in this specific way. Like, the pauses aren't because they're doing text dialogue,
Yeah,
because they couldn't.
it's yeah. It was clunky back then. It was impressive
Yeah,
compared to
yeah,
not being able to have it at all, but it was
yeah,
still objectively it's clunky in terms of there's still an obvious
yeah.
stop the main soundtrack thingy go or the active sound stuff, load up the voice clip, play the
Mm-hmm.
voice clip, go back to what we were doing before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, since I can't judge this against the other versions of Valis, um, I like I don't know how bad the other ones are or good, or charting the evolution, and that's actually a big problem with this collection. Um, like, it gets the basics done.
Mm-hmm.
If you're willing to shell out, like, it's got the games, it's got it's got the art book filled with you know the tantalizing anecdotes, the behind the scenes stuff. Like, you get to see concept art in various stages of production, so on and so forth, and you get the entire you get the 3 games worth of soundtracks as well. Once again, that's the bare minimum today. uh, like, in terms of the emulate, what you can do with the emulation, it's also very standard.
Mm-hmm.
Like, In fact, it's a bit lacking because I don't think I saw like CRT filters or anything of that nature in the actual options. You know, thankfully, this game has rewind.
Mm-hmm.
You know, these being old school action platformers, you're gonna need them. You know, especially since the hit detection isn't the best. If I'm being honest, yeah. And you can also do save and load. You know, so while we can't showcase the and connecting to the lines of Valis, we can't showcase how Valis 1 evolved through the various versions, but we can juxtapose it to its immediate sequel slash the first game on the TG16 CD. That's Valis 2. And you're going to note the differences pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much in the cutscenes, like although I will say the cutscenes here do showcase a bit of earliness. Like the color composition isn't quite as good as Valis 1. Like
Some of it almost looks like emulation issues. Like, I can't really tell on that.
it's possible.
Again, we don't have
But
original hardware on hand to actually test this with, so to me that looks like
yeah,
there's just emulation bug, but
it wouldn't surprise me if Mac has these.
Oh yeah, probably.
That's another thing to mention. All these games are in Japanese.
Yes. There was a thing that changed language, but
we can afford to re-release them. We can't afford to translate them.
No, that's incorrect. Because these games did get translated back in the day, up to a point. We're not talking about Valis 4, which didn't get translated on the TG16 CD, but
granted,
the first
these were
three
also 80s translations of anime, so yikes on
90s.
90s, but still, a giant yikes.
Let me lay out the overall point here. Because there's a okay.
Just between this and the last game, oh my god, what the hell did they do?
Well, I told you would see the differences immediately.
Yeah, holy shit.
Like, this is what I'm talking about in Valis 1 being kind of a lie.
Yeah.
Because this is what the earlier Valis games tended to look like. Now, Yuko
it's not terrible, but it's definitely smaller.
My first experience with Valis was that, I guess, remake of Valis when I just played. Going from that to this, oh my god.
And this is
ironically,
the animations look a little bit snappier on this one.
Yeah, that is the irony. They're not because there's not as much animation here. It's smoother. Valis 1 and by extension Valis 3 are kind of over animated. Once again, CD format, we got to show it to its fullest extent. And by the early 90s, we kind of figured out the technology a bit more than when this came out in the early 80s, in the late 80s. I'm like, but the game just feels a whole lot simpler, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like,
and I don't have my slide.
That once again, that's the big thing. There's no slide.
I still jump like 20 feet in the air.
Well, yeah, you're special powers girl. And more importantly, you're in a vaguely platformy-ish game.
It's not a vaguely platformish game. It will get more platformy as we go along. I mean, the first stage of Valis 1 was pretty flat as well. There's a boss who's also pretty squat. Like I said,
Behold
Everyone
my
needs to take their
sword missile.
Which is heat-seeking.
God.
Oh.
Oh my god, it is. What the fuck?
No, it's a literal missile. That's why I'm laughing.
I was joking. What the fuck?
They were not.
But little girl, how do you store so many missiles inside your sword?
Magic. Oh. It's been worth it just for this. So while you continue to trudge along, I'll get back to my earlier point.
Yes.
I'm like, so at the very least, Valis 2 here and Valis 3 were localized, fully voiced on the TG16. But there are two reasons why they're not here. Two possible reasons. One, they are absolutely fucking awful. We are talking about the literal dawn of video game dubbing. And the TG16 is home of some of the most wretched video game dubbing ever.
Like we are talking definite blacklisting bullshit.
Not really, because it was just, they didn't have the infrastructure, they didn't have the production value, they didn't have anything. Like, they were literally building it as they were going along. So, while it's very bad, it's the very cheesy kind of bad. Like, think Resident Evil, only worse.
Get worse? I'm joking.
Go look up the dub for The Last Alert. Holy shit. The Valis games are among those kind of dubs. But the other thing is, who even owns those dubs? Because they were translated by NEC back in the early 90s. They could be in the hands of the current copyright holders, which are Konami, Hudson, and Big Lobe, which apparently got the NEC stuff.
Then again, they could be in some fucking IP monger's hands or something. I don't know.
Right. The point is not available. And that's where the hands of like Digital Eclipse, Night Dive, Sneg, those people really come into play. They're the kind of companies that would go and find the dub if at all possible. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's not possible.
And like if it was like really bad, they would see about redubbing it.
Yeah.
And at that point,
that is another thing.
But if you're going to do that, at that point, you're literally looking at, okay, or we could hire WayForward or Ninja Creates or someone to just do a remake.
Yeah. Something like that. The thing is, EDA put out this collection, put out these things themselves. And they're a Japanese company. It's just all of the menu stuff is in English. So if you actually want to play these games, even though it has a warning it's not supported in your original language,
it's still playable.
You can still play them.
And I believe the script is still available for anyone who really needs the story.
Yeah, it's like you can go and read the story, but it's like, honestly, you might want to be skipping the cutscenes.
Yeah.
Because unless you're fluent in Japanese, you're not going to understand why Yuko and Reiko hate each other here.
Also, very, very, very drunk.
Yeah. I'm like... Anyway, so... I think it's a good time to switch over to Valis 3.
Alrighty.
Because Valis 3, in its own way, is the ultimate expression of Valis. Or at least the original Valis trilogy. Because, well, I'll get right to the brass tacks here. Valis 3 takes a lot of cues from Castlevania 3. Yeah. Because for starters, Valis 3 will introduce multiple characters.
Oh man.
Yeah. Each with their own powers and such and such. The problem is they're not as distinct as Castlevania 3's lineup is.
Well, Castlevania 3, you always had Trevor, and then you could choose one of the other three.
Right. And then, this
So
game.
since you always had Trevor, you had a lot of freedom in what you had the other ones do.
Yeah. Like I said, so we kind of have that dynamic here, except so it's not 1-to-1, but generally speaking, Yuko, she's Symphony of the Night era Alucard for obvious reasons. She's still of sword beams and such. And then we have Valnia, Yuko's sister from another dimension. That's a whole thing.
Again, you can go look at the plot if you really need to.
Like, she was introduced in Valis 2, but she becomes playable here. She's Saifa Belnades. Oh, very much so. Like, she's the wizard. She's the mage. And attacks with...
So her main attack is bad, but she gets powerful sub-weapons, or just her whole thing is like, I got a magic stick?
That one. She's got a magic stick. Because, the damage taken for each character doesn't differ. That's what I'm talking about here. Like, the differences in the characters are in the weaponry. And how the weaponry plays out. In fact, one of the game breakers is Valna's freeze spell, which does a lot for very little. In terms of because instead of sub-weapons, you have magic spells, but that's been a constant through the series. That's their spin on the Castlevania sub-weapons. If you want the most direct Castlevania parallel, that's Charm, or Chom. The Oni girl, who is, of course, very girl-like, save for she's got a horn. Because, of course, we have to have her attractive. How else can you ogle her? But she uses a whip. I'm like, and yeah, she's Simon Belmont, Trevor Belmont. She's your honorary Belmont for the game.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, and once again,
did lady just jump off a building?
Yeah.
All right.
And once again, you can see how this is the middle child in the TurboGrafx 16 Valis trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
How it's going from Valis 2, Valis 3 to Valis 1. Because the sprite work here is better.
Oh, this is very Mana-esque combat.
Except there, it's a little bit in 2 dimensions, or rather, one main dimension of action.
Right.
It's a little bit clunkier here than as a substitute for like turn-based. Because in the Mana series, the point of it is to be pseudo turn-based,
Yeah.
where you have to wait to recharge after your attacks, or you can suck at it.
Don't worry, he's got a rewind key, so it doesn't matter.
I was gonna say, one advantage of playing this in a collection is that you don't have to memorize everything perfectly and can just rewind things slightly.
Oh yeah,
So,
I would have dropped this entire series by now if I didn't have this fucking collection.
I mean, just remember, back then it was standard and kids had more time on their hands.
Yeah. And it is worth noting that this game is drawing from another series that I haven't mentioned yet. Try to guess. It involves ninjas.
Doing a Gaiden?
Yes. You cannot tell me those those lanterns aren't from fucking Ninja Gaiden.
No.
And if not that, then Shinobi. I just know ninjas are involved here.
I think I'm stuck.
No, you got... Guess what they... Like I said, this is actually the debut of the slide.
I'm trying to slide. It's not letting me slide.
It's a different button. Hit, it's on the character selection button this time around.
What?
Whatever button you got that junction to. Yeah.
I'm looking at the jump down.
Yeah.
I don't see a slide button.
There's not a slide button. It's a combination.
Oh my god! It's start and down.
Welcome to having two face buttons. Here's the thing: you can you can actually change the button layouts. I would actually recommend doing that for Valis 3. You can change that from the start to an actual face button.
Fuck is wrong with the 80s?
It's specifically to the TG16.
Fair.
Because they had to get now why they put the slide mechanic on the character selection button, that's beyond me. But you can do it now. And I need you to get to the first boss because there's a specific thing I need to talk about there.
Oh god, is this him? Are we there?
Do you see a big NEC screen?
Yes.
Then yes. Because I need to talk about that screen. Because...
This screen took them 5,000 man-hours to code, and... No, I'm kidding.
No. This is something that they didn't have in the Nintendo Switch version. Which,
for obvious reasons.
Yeah. Because, they actually changed this in the Switch version. It's actually... In the Nintendo Switch version, it's actually... The sign is actually of Ida. So they actually had someone go in there and physically change the sprite background there.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to here, where we get the actual original sprite.
Mm-hmm.
Which means this has been either properly licensed, or somebody got really lazy and might be in trouble.
We'll find out when the lawsuits start. Or if they start.
Or if this thing gets pulled.
Yeah.
I'm assuming all the contracts have been properly signed.
Mm-hmm.
But I needed to bring that up.
Right.
Because I'm like, that is the kind of thing that comes up in our classic revival conversation.
Let's go get Steven to talk about this for another 2 hours.
Both of them.
Exactly.
Not just Kick and Frost.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we get them foaming at the mouth by the end of the first half hour again.
Probably. Like,
oh, hi, Belmont.
I told you!
Just
I
dead
told
ass.
you she was the fucking Belmont here. Complete with chain whip and everything. Like I said, I guess this is the best overall of the three. At least in terms of ambition. I'll be honest, I tilt towards Valis 1 because it's got all the improvements, but it also doesn't have the, let's put the slide on the character select button.
Let's commit a gamer sin.
It's not the only one they do. The fucking water level. I was going to have to address this because whoever came up with that level, they need to go back to design school or get punched in the face or something.
I'm thinking both.
Well, I haven't even talked about the specific problem for that one. Because they actually had it where you cannot progress unless you have a specific power. Like, unless you had the freeze ability, you can't actually cross the water sections. You have to use the enemies as platforms. I want to hurt whoever thought that was a good idea. Like,
okay, the jumping is very weird and very bad.
That's another thing about this Valis 3 here. The jump arc is so fucking weird and janky, even for this game series. Okay, another instance of the jank. You're probably ahead, but instead of jumping, you gotta slide across.
Slide?
You will slide over it. You will slide it over it. I'm not joking.
You have to slide.
It's an expression. It's the ultimate expression of the walking over the short gaps thing that old games used to have. Remember that? The gaps are so small you could just walk over it. That's that. But supersized. See?
I'm gonna need something stiff after this.
Hey, I've got a cool, clever idea we could use for our platforming. No one's ever done it before. Sir, I think there might be a reason why no one's ever done it before.
No shit! Crimes against gaming have been committed here. What the actual fuck is going on?
Oh. I'm glad I got you these. So we can... I think the Valis collection has hurt Petty.
Yes.
Oh, it's going to be very interesting to turn this in.
Yeah, I'm broken.
I mean, we're not even criticizing the re-release here. The re-release is fine.
The re-release is fine.
This is just these were games from an era where not everybody had totally figured out what makes for a good platforming action game yet.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. The other, a lot of the other Valis games, they're fucking worse. Hell, you want to know where Valis originated from? 80s Japanese computers. Think about how bad those versions are.
Yeah, because if this was a brand new game released in 2024, I'd be like, fuck it, we're done. I wouldn't even be laughing. I'd be like, let's move on to the next thing before I punch something. Yeah. But I know how jank games in the 80s, early 90s were. So that's why I just have to
And,
laugh at this because
yeah,
it's of the time, you
right,
know.
right. And they, and that's been, for better or for worse, preserved.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, another note about the collection here, in terms of grafting the controls to a controller, I recommend doing that for the D-pad as well,
Right.
because for whatever reason, the default is on the analog stick.
Yeah.
At least for me, it was.
It was for me too.
And
Granted, I have a brand new Xbox controller, so my joystick is good, but I could see somebody having an older, more beat up controller. You'd probably definitely want to use your D pad.
yeah,
Or hell, keyboard
yeah,
would probably be fine.
possibly, but I'm just saying if you're using a gamepad, which I'd imagine people would, because um,
This
this is,
isn't the yeah.
these were versions that were built for a D-pad.
Mm-hmm.
You know, once again, if we were talking about, say, the MSX version, that'd be a different story, because
Right.
that was built for a keyboard.
Yeah.
Um, you got to take these things into consideration. But I would absolutely recommend grafting the controls onto a D-pad, because
Mm-hmm.
playing this, I did play a bit with the analog stick, to see how it felt, and it felt pretty awful.
Yeah.
Even for even for these games,
Yeah, I
right?
think that might just be a dead zone setting with yours because I think it's okay. It's obviously not the best, but that's also these
I
games
mean,
have
it's,
enough jank.
yeah. Well, it's also, I just, in general, do not like playing with a 2D game with an analog stick.
Right.
But unless it was built for that. And
Right.
there are some games, like Rogue, like twin stick shooters.
Hmm.
They play fine with
We'll be
a.
getting into my thoughts on one of those next season. I've looked at the upcoming list.
Hmm, right.
Spoilers, Blue Hedgehog.
Anyway, so that kind of wraps up the talk about everything here.
Mm.
Um, at least for now, because once again, since they released this as a platform, we could be here again when they release Valis Collection 2, which, that's like that's Valis 4 and a whole bunch of the computer games, for example. And and I think Valis the Collection 3, that's like the Mega Drive
Oh,
ports.
they do have the if you really want the story stuff, like want to see it subtitled, they play those in a video file
Ah,
outside from the launcher. That's
With
interesting.
subtitles or
With
translated audio?
looks like English subs for the first one.
mm,
Oh, that's a nice thing to have.
yeah,
Let me see documents, story
yeah. It's
viewer.
like, I think
English
we can.
audio for the second one,
Yeah.
though you can change language if you want. And then the third one is English audio. So that's nice.
Indeed.
See, this is what we get when I poke around and stuff. They do pop open in a like your computer's standard video player, so it means just the video files are just in the Steam directory.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I guess that's it on my.
Yeah. Anyway, so let me get to pricing here. So once again, each individual bit is going to cost a bit. And that is to say, Valis 1, 2, and 3. they're all clocking in at $6, $5.99.
Each
The
or
Valis Collection
total?
each.
Mm.
I'm like, the Valis Collection soundtrack is also clocking in at $6. Um, and the Valis Collection art book is a bit more expensive at $7.99. Anyway, so all told, this package costs $31.95. Now, that is still less expensive than the digital collection of on Switch for Valis the Phantasm Soldier collection. That costs $39.99 on the Switch. So in that regard, you're still getting a bargain here.
Yeah. It's definitely one of those. If they're charging that much, I almost feel that they're wanting to put more out and they would be included in the Switch version if there's
Yeah.
that much of a price discrepancy. But we have no word from the developer on that. That's just my
Mm-hmm.
personal gut feeling.
Let's see. Yeah, and it's the same publisher on both platforms. It is worth noting the Switch version did get a physical release from Limited Run Games some yonks ago, so have fun hunting that down.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but in terms of if this is worth 30 some odd dollars, that's a bit hard to determine. Like,
If it
because
gives you the other Valis games later on, sure, $32 is grand. If
it
it's
won't.
just
I can already say it won't because once again, why else would you do this individual divvying thing?
yeah, that's the if part. If you're just getting these three, no.
Like, yeah, because I'm trying to think, evaluate this to someone who's into the series versus people like us who are complete neophytes. Um, and I'm like, okay, for those who are who liked Valis back in the day, they probably already own this.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
If not owning the physical games.
yeah.
Though I
You know,
guess the having a decent way to access the story content, if you so desire,
yeah.
is
Uh,
nice.
but yeah, in terms of new people, like they're just not all these games just aren't all that good. Like
Mm-hmm.
okay, I couldn't call them outright trash, but you know, it's the conundrum of the B tier. On the one hand, the the 6 out of 10s need to be preserved as well.
Yeah, like I've been mentioning,
Hmm.
video game like studying video games like in like an educational setting, they shouldn't just give you like the Marios, the greatest games of all time. They should also like have them study stuff like this,
Right. But on the other hand,
If you
like
just see the stuff that is good, you don't learn how to
not
see
make a
something that's
yeah.
not great and then
yeah,
make it better.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And once again, these games aren't awful. At least these versions of
Yeah.
these games. But they've got pretty glaring problems. Once
Mm-hmm.
again, I think Valis 1 here is the best. It's clearly the most polished.
Mm-hmm.
That's just after after being the last in the set, you can really see all of what they've learned being put into, ironically enough, the first package. I'm like, and honestly, if you were to pick one individual game to go with here, I would definitely say Valis the Phantasm Soldier, the first one. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it's the most polished. It looks the best. I'm not sure about sounds the best. That might depend on your audio tastes.
Yeah.
Um, but and it doesn't have quite as much jank as the other two do. I'm like, And yeah, I think that's about all I got on Valis here for the time being. And would you look at that? This review took an hour, as we all knew it would.
Shock. This is my shocked face.
Anyway, so coming up on the week ahead on November 13th, Wednesday, um, we will be having our season finale. We will be welcoming back to the program Jason Nepo, Nepoitano of Scarlet Moon to the program. If you remember, they're the video game music brokering agency that agreed to appear on our show. I'm like, and we're probably going to be talking about things like um, their dealings with the Vision of Mana soundtrack. It's apparently a thing that they did recently. And the Unicorn Overload original soundtrack. Um, also, I think we need to. Also, I think I wanted to highlight their video game publishing division this time around, of which their name escapes me right now, but we'll probably remember by Wednesday. Um, and until then, I shall wish you good gaming.